You're here. I'm here. Let's do this. Ladies and gents, the sun is shining outside. There's another beautiful day here for the Wrestling Connection podcast because it can only mean one thing. It's the summertime and we are here for another episode. It's episode number 19, featuring that Limp Bizkit song that was never actually released, called Crack Addict for some reason. Which is a really great song.
I always wanted to download it. And I'll tell you something, around the time I got that in video, so I think that was maybe the summer of 03. It was actually maybe later than that. Maybe it was the summer of 04, because it did take a while for the tapes and the DVDs to become available over here back in the day. But I remember being out, and this is embarrassing. This is like, I needed friends when I was 13, 14. I remember like we drove up to like my great aunt and uncle's in Elgin, which is in the northeast of Scotland, folks, if you're not from there. And they had this big garden and they had a dog. And I would like used to run about and play with the dog, but then because I'd watched WrestleMania 19 that weekend on videotape, maybe as late as a year after it happened, I couldn't get the song in my head, so I'd run about with this dog singing what I thought were the words to Crack Addict. I can't even remember what I thought the words were, but it was wrong, and the fact that I can barely make eye contact with people now, and back then I was able to scream my lungs out in the back garden singing "Right now, let's go, me and you." You know, but I love that song. Absolutely love it.
3, 2, 1. Oh, well, listen, you can't get much worse than the WrestleMania 16 theme song. Ooh, and the Foley.
And a Foley. Never mind this California business. And a Foley.
I know. Listen, how are you? Busy week. First week back to somewhat normality. You're probably absolutely shattered. That's why I appreciate your time here to record this episode today. How are you?
I'm good. I am tired. Schools reopened this week. We had a phased return of pupils. And so at the time of the recording, Monday will be the day that all kids come back. But all different schools in the country are doing it differently. The place that I just left had them all back last week in the winter.
Yeah.
So it's just been weird, but it's nice just to finally get to meet more of my classes. But yeah, it's like I'd forgotten what this felt like to be at home on a Friday night and to struggle to get past 8 p.m. That was like the norm before lockdown. And you know, you think of Friday night and you think of being young and you think of staying up late and, you know, relaxing and enjoying yourself a bit. Nope. Bedtime at a sensible hour for Mr. Fraser.
Were you nervous going back to like speaking in front of a big crowd of people again, or is it just really natural for you?
I mean, I'm always nervous, but I don't know. I'm about to compare myself to Hulk Hogan here. Hulk Hogan was nervous before WrestleMania 18, and because he hadn't done it in a while on that level.
I guess.
You know what I mean? Like, and since I'm so similar to Hulk Hogan in so many ways, let's just leave it at that.
Financially, looks-wise, mad racist. There you go.
I'm also going to be played. I'm also going to be played by Chris Hemsworth in an upcoming biopic.
What is that going to be? Oh my goodness!
I hope they don't just make it this squeaky clean thing. They should tackle the problematic stuff about Hogan. They should tackle the racism and, you know, just do an honest depiction of his career.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, I just don't want it to be this two-dimensional, one-dimensional kind of business. But anyway, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I was nervous. But I think some of the best stuff I've done as a teacher comes from a place of nerves.
Right, okay.
And that's normal, though. I think it's okay to be open with the people you teach, with the kids, that, you know, to let them know that you're nervous, because, you know, a lot of the time kids are just as nervous, especially when you're coming back from a pandemic. You know, they all seem so happy to be back, but like, you know, you never know what's going on underneath. It's like,
yeah,
you know, it's an anxiety-ridden thing to come back to this after months of being told to keep our distance. All of a sudden, we're all running around the playground. You know, it's a scary ordeal, but I just hope that we avoid like any kind of spikes or minor lockdowns or anything like that, and that we can just press on ahead happily and healthily. That's what I want. I just want to be teaching properly again. So Monday will be the first time where I've got multiple classes a day, and it'll feel a bit more like I'll be a proper teacher again.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. You can keep us updated here on the show. I totally get that though. Talking about always being nervous and always having that wee thing in your tummy, just like saying,
Yeah.
like, making you feel pressure a little bit. It's like if I ever do a show in like a theatre or something. Like
Yeah.
I've done loads of shows in loads of different theatres in front of like tiny audiences, bigger audiences, when there's been like important people in the audience, when there's been no one that I've ever met in my life in the audience, my whole family's been there, that sort of thing. But there's
Mhm.
always that feeling, and it makes you kind of it's called theatre magic. You just kind of have that wee buzz, that wee adrenaline, and it just makes something special happen. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
teaching's a lot, similar, because it's like you know what you need to do, you know how to do it, you've proven yourself that you're a good teacher, but it's all about, can you just get back into that kind of flow? You know what I mean? Just make sure that it definitely all clicks. But I'm sure you'll get there, no bother at all.
Fingers
Um,
crossed, my friend.
where you mentioned, hoping there's not going to be any more spikes or a second wave. Or I'm sure there will be a little bit, but maybe not too bad, especially in our kind of area. I'd like to kind of look back at lockdown with somewhat of a positive sense, because like I really did enjoy the downtime and the relaxation, and it made us do this podcast, and we were able to do it every week, and I was
Yeah.
able to spend lots more time with family and watch all these TV shows and stuff like that. Of course, it's a horrific thing, people being ill and people losing loved ones and people losing their jobs and stuff, but like I just feel like when we look back at 2020, we're going to completely write it off, but there has been some positives that's come out of lockdown. And I'd just like to thank anybody who's listened to any of the episodes, because it's made it, a lot of fun for us to continue doing this every week. We're getting back to normality and we're picking things up again. But we're still wanting to do it. We're still wanting to find time. We're still wanting to record. And it's good for us too as well, in terms of, catching up and just staying in touch more often. So I think
Yeah.
in general, it's been a kind of a blessing in disguise for the podcast and for family time. But we're hoping that, we stay on course and there's no more real dip in, normality sent back in again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to second those thanks. It's funny because last night, after Friday afternoon, after school finished and the bell rang, I didn't go straight home to fall asleep on the couch. I went into town and met a couple pals for some drinks, and it was the first time I'd been in Glasgow city centre since you and I went
Really?
to see the Grado show in March, like mere days before lockdown began. And we were at that wrestling show together, and I was
Yeah.
reflecting on that, and I was just thinking, if you told me then, when we were just sitting in the pub thinking about what our podcast might be and what our topics might be, that we'd be where we are with it now, and we would have had Paul Heyman endorsing us and all that, and all
Yeah.
these daft things, all the cameos and the laughter, and that we would have produced so much content. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
Regardless of how many or how few people listen to us, I'm proud that we've got like a body of work, to put it, in a maybe inflated kind of way. But I'm proud of it, and I'm really chuffed with it. And it's, I think it'll be weird when I finally see you again. I mean,
Exactly. You're so used to just hearing my voice.
yeah, I'm so used to be able to kind of just not have to worry about making eye contact or being polite or anything like that. So I think it'll be fun, and I don't know how and when we're going to do it, but it's got to happen soon. But I look forward to us sitting down and doing one of these face to face. But I still haven't seen you since March, and we're now sitting in
Yeah.
August.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's gonna
Mm.
be it's gonna be a real, I think it'll be a lot of fun when we sit down in person and do an episode, if we do a watch along or whatever, but it is going to be
Mm.
strange because I'm so used to looking at the pop filter on my microphone when I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just look like this thing. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that and seeing how it goes. I'm sure it'll be dandy. I'm sure it'll be
Mm.
fine. But I'm sure it'll be a different vibe at all. Guess what I bought this week?
True Love's Kiss.
No, I bought a wrestling magazine.
What? Wait, is there some Fighting Spirit? Pro Wrestling
No, it
Illustrated?
is Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and this month,
Okay.
big Drew McIntyre is on the cover holding the WWE title, and I thought if there was ever a collector's item, that's one.
Yeah. Yeah, the COVID
Just
champion.
because the COVID champion, and it also says August 20, which is my birthday month. I'm turning another year older. I'm turning 64 next week. And listen, I've always loved the idea of collecting magazines and the different covers and that sort of thing and the special editions. And I know you have always, had a soft spot for magazines, whether it be Power
Yeah.
Slam or whatever, So this is definitely one that I wouldn't normally buy one, especially because of the fucking price. But just because I was at Loch Lomond Shores with the fam, and it was like a nice day out, we're having ice cream and that sort of thing, nice and sunny.
Oh.
And we went into the wee sort of newsagent shop, and it was just sitting there, and I was like, my God, if there was ever a time to buy another magazine, it was right now. And they cover WrestleMania in this one. They've got a whole page about the Boneyard match, which could potentially be Undertaker's last one. So I think that's a nice one to have sort of documented. It's got Edge and Orton in here, obviously, and all the other fun stuff from WrestleMania, including Drew McIntyre winning the title for the first time. So I'm very happy with it. It's kind of been sitting on my couch all week, so I've just kind of randomly been flicking through it like I'm doing now. And they're kind of still talking about like results from shows that kind of happened before lockdown. So like there's different states and that sort of thing. So you got Florida, and then so it's funny in the Florida section there's loads of shows because everybody's in there. But things like Georgia, California, Connecticut, and they're still talking about like Northeast Wrestling and Alternative Pro and all that stuff that really haven't run a show, you know, in terms of independent wrestling for ages. And I hope we can get back to that. And there's a beautiful wee segue to talk about some current events just before we got on to SummerSlam chat part 2. But my God, this past week, I know we might be in a wee bit of a delay, but German promotion WXW, independent promotion Evolve. I'm forgetting one. What's the other one? There's another one. But then, of course, homegrown. No, I know that one. Oh, it's Progress. Progress is the other one that was the English and top independent promotion. But then homegrown Scottish Glasgow-based ICW that we talk about all the time here in the podcast about memories of being at the shows together will be now shown on the WWE network. An announcement that was monumental because it's been in the works for a long time, but one of those things that you think, oh, well, plans must have just fallen away, because, ICW is great, but you never know how professional they can be and you never know what's going on behind the scenes. But now the fact that it's done, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's a big announcement. How do you think they managed to do that?
Well, WWE and ICW have had a good working relationship for a number of years now. For quite a while. I mean, I don't know exactly when it started, but the first time it became obvious was when the WWE pulled Mick Foley from Fear and Loathing because they wanted him to be part of Survivor Series. And then, of course, the then injured Finn Balor was loaned out to Fear and Loathing, and that was an excellent show. It was their first ever Hydro show as well. And it was cool because Galloway was technically part of TNA at that point, I'm pretty sure still. He was part of Impact, so it was cool to see a WWE guy and an Impact guy collide briefly at a time when you didn't usually see that kind of thing. And of course, we've, then with the kind of launch of WWE UK and then NXT UK, which kind of grew from that. And then I think of things like Triple H showing up at that Cardiff show. Can you imagine how mind-blowing you would have been when that happened?
I just loved how it was unannounced. He just showed up. That's brilliant.
Just swings by. And, you go to that show and Pete Dunne's there. Then you're already kind of, oh, cool, there's Pete Dunne. He's a big star in UK and he's the WWE UK champion. And then, do you know what I think about that, though? When I watched that clip, I think they kind of wasted, like, how they presented Triple H. Because I'm not saying he had to go in and wrestle a match or drop his pedigree or a spinebuster or something, but Mark Dallas just pretty much said, Triple H, come on out here. Now you want like the lights to dim and then the music to hit and people to go, oh! I felt like it was a bit of an anticlimax the way they did it, but the fans were still obviously amazed to see him.
I totally get you. However, because he's Triple H, I think it worked because he said Triple H coming out here and they're all going, Don't be ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? Like, it'd be different if it was like the ICW champion making a return or something, or even if Pete Dunne did that. That would probably have spoiled it. But the fact he says that, the crowd are still not believing it until it happens. You can hear that when he comes out, it's not like a yes ovation. It's a what?
Yeah. So I can imagine actually.
I get you.
I mean, they probably expected to be one of those things where they get Chris Toll to dress up as Triple H.
Exactly.
You would have expected that more than the actual guy himself.
So I guess they kind of got away with it with that. But yeah, that's mental. I just can't believe it. I can't wait to scroll into the WWE Network sort of in-ring section and it says Shug's House Party. I think that's brilliant. And there's going to be like Americans watching it just be like, Shug's House Party 5 Night 2. But the one thing that's been on my mind since this announcement is they better feckin' pay for Madonna.
I know. Grado was tweeting about that earlier. They're not gonna.
Absolutely not. There's no chance. There's no way. They shouldn't even let Grado use it for TNA, never mind WWE. So I'd understand maybe if it was like a big star that really, really wanted a theme song, but maybe not that. But it's really going to take away from it because I don't care what anybody says. ICW have some great wrestling matches. They have some cool moments. The absolute best thing about ICW is Grado's entrance. I refuse to believe anything otherwise. Or just Grado in general.
the promotion, and listen, guys, we're talking about this knowing that UK wrestling is going through a difficult transitionary time right now, and we're all kind of hoping that UK wrestling gets better and
Of
safer for
course.
everyone, no matter who you are, your gender, whatever. But when I reflect on the history of ICW, like as a consumer, and I think of all the amazing moments, the great matches, the memories, the rise of Grado, and him hopping the barricade for that first night of the garage, against Red Lightning, that I think the rise of Grado and the creation of Grado as a star is ICW's legacy. Really.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I know that Galloway got a lot of he was the first champion there, and then of course he had that great return run with ICW. And I know so many people who've passed through that promotion are now in the big leagues. But I think as a Scottish wrestling fan, as a Glaswegian who's been to so many of those shows, Grado is like the success story. He is the swan song, and in terms of Scottish stars and local Scottish celebrities, he's probably the most successful guy. And I'm not, by that criteria, I'm disqualifying people like Galloway who are big stars in America. But Grado
Yeah.
is a local guy. He does the panto. He does the BBC Scotland stuff. He's in the
River
newspaper.
City.
He does all that. Yeah, exactly. The River City. He does all that stuff. He's a real Scottish star to have come out of that, and who has transcended just Scottish wrestling. He's always Grado the wrestler, but he's an actor and a comedian as well now.
Yeah, he's literally become a household name in this country. Like, people who say, have you seen this show or whatever, and they go, no, what's it about? There's a good chance the person will go, oh, that wrestler's in it. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a local
Yeah.
thing, like Scott Squad or whatever, Two Doors Down, River City, all these things. There's no way he would have got that. He's a hilarious, charismatic guy. But there's no way he would have got that without the rise of, him and ICW and stuff, and just the ovations and the connection he has with the crowd. When I go to an ICW show, or when I'm thinking about going to an ICW show, I'm going to go, chill with you, chill with my friends, see live wrestling. That's all cool. But like, if I'm still kind of on the fence, and if I know Grado's going to be on the show, there's a good chance I'm going to go.
Yeah.
That's because he's the draw.
Yeah, he's a draw, and he's also shown like he's really quite versatile as a wrestler. I think, because I know he always has been primarily a comedy character.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for a long time, that's all you saw from him. And that was great because it was always such a laugh. And I'm thinking about, him, Dave's Not Here Man versus Colt Cabana in Edinburgh. Like that opened the show, and that was a great match. It was hilarious. But then my favorite Grado match is easily at the Square Go against Chris Renfrew. And that was
so
not
good.
a comedy match. There was nothing at all funny about the match, apart from him entering with face paint on. He had that tiger face paint, I think. Or maybe I'm confusing shows.
No, that's a different one. But he came out with like a different song, remember?
Yeah, because he was the serious Grado.
Yeah, serious Grado, yeah.
And he was wearing
great.
and just I loved that match, and it was excellent, and the fans were kind of starting to get a wee bit smarky about Grado at that point, and he just threw it right back in their faces. Other classic Grado moment is the Gradoberg entrance in the ABC. Were you there for that?
No, I wasn't. I wish I was.
Amazing. He's had so many great entrances. I was also there the night that Michelle McManus appeared to sing like a prayer.
That's right.
That was amazing.
I think I was there as well. But remember when he turned heel?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. Like, it was one of the most shocking, because obviously we see these moments on TV, these shocking moments in WWE and that sort of thing, but I've never actually been there live for one. You know what I mean? That was like a jaw-dropping moment. I was like, what? People like throwing things at him and spitting at him and stuff like that. I was like, I can't believe what we're seeing. So I'm very, very proud of him, and I'm very, very happy that he's kind of one of the representations of the country, because he's a comedy act, and you can laugh at him, but like, you can't doubt the story, and you can't doubt the success story of him. No, it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful journey.
I know you're probably keen to move on, but have you ever, and I know this isn't Meet a Wrestler, right? But have you ever had any fun meetings with Grado, any fun encounters with him?
A couple of times.
Yeah.
A couple of times. I met him right before the TNA show he did with Al Snow at the Hydro. I think that was the first time. He was just down the foyer kind of signing autographs and stuff like that, and my mate went up and saw him, and I kind of took a picture, and then I went after, and he went to pose for the picture, and I said, how many people have said to you, it's your cell? And he went, fucking too many, like that, right? And then like he kind of wrapped his arm around me for the picture, and they kind of started laughing, and he like squeezed me as if like I popped him, as if like he was like, finally someone said something that wasn't it's yourself, and ironically it was about the catchphrase. So I felt quite proud of myself. I was like, I've actually said something kind of funny to him. But I've seen him like at shows and stuff, but never. That was like the first time like I've taken a picture with him and spoke to him.
Yeah. I mean, likewise, I've met him a bunch of times. I can't tell you how many times, and I've got quite a few pictures with him. But on 3 separate occasions, I bumped into him in 3 separate public toilets.
Right.
In the build up to the Edinburgh show where he faced Colt Cabana, I was at the
Right.
stand, the stand at Glasgow, where how Billy Kirkwood often compares. And I
Yeah.
went there and I was dying for a pee, right? And there were 3, I think there was only 3 urinals, or it might have been just like one of those big urinal things, but there's only so much space, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The 2 cubicles or the 1 cubicle was taken, and then there was these 3 urinals or like space for 3 people, and there was Grado, space, Billy Kirkwood peeing. I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna have to go in
Oh
between these 2
God.
guys. So I did so, and I managed. And then it was only, and they were having a really, like, I'm not going into any details, but they were actually having a very clearly private conversation. They had not like very
Right.
serious conversation. They were talking about quite a serious thing. So I'm in there as this proper smart, trying to hide the fact that I'm wearing an ICW t-shirt to the stand.
Yes.
But then I spoke to him after that. I then bumped into him when I was out with my brother when I was like 26 or something. I think we'd been to see Ricky Gervais, or we were going to see. Either way,
Oh,
we'd
I'd
had
love to go see Ricky Gervais.
it was a great show, man. Like, we'd had quite a lot to drink, and we were in a bar in Finiston, like near the Hydro and near like the Armadillo. And again, I was in the toilets and I bumped into him. But by that point, I was wearing a Paul Heyman t-shirt, the same one I wore when I met him. I'm a Paul Heyman guy. And he was in the toilet. He'd already rolled up a cigarette, and he had it in his mouth, so he couldn't really talk properly. And he just pointed at me and went, as if he was looking at the Heyman t-shirt. And I realized that he was absolutely smashed as well. And then, so we came out and we took a picture, and he gave the middle finger in the picture, because he was just kind of properly, I don't think he spoke to me at all because it was so loud. So we took a picture outside the toilets, and then very quickly, the last time I met Grado in a public toilet was at the Walkabout in Glasgow, where Billy Gunn was doing a show and Grado was going to be interviewing him. And we got there to get food in the afternoon, and then they shut it down and they kicked everybody out for the show to get set up. But we were eating. So, and we said, we have tickets for the show. They said, right, well, you can just stay and eat. And then the entire ICW roster showed up. So I'm in Walkabout. It's me, Robert.
That's great.
All the ICW roster, like Kenny McIntosh was there, Mark Dallas was there, Grado, of course, was there. We see Billy Gunn walking in and go up the stairs and stuff. And so all these Scottish wrestling personalities were around us. And I went to the toilet and I bumped into Grado, and I told him that we'd been to see a stand-up show at the King's Theatre. And I told him that Robert could do the worm, and Robert was too chicken to volunteer to do the worm on stage when he was looking for somebody to come up and show off a talent. So then Grado came out the toilets with me and gave Robert a really hard time for not doing the worm at his show. And I've met him a bunch more at different events and shows. But yeah, I thought I'd share, since we're talking about him, even though this is not Meet a Wrestler, I thought I'd share those 3 toilet themed.
I have one toilet meeting of a wrestler. It was at the Cat House, almost to the day 1 year ago. I was out for my birthday night out.
All right.
And I went to the toilet, and I just was in the wee cubicle bit, and then I kind of flushed the toilet and stuff, and I opened the door, and standing there was Jack Jester. He was standing there like trying to get in, like, because I'd locked obviously the cubicle, and he went to check and see if it was locked, and it just so happened that I was coming out at the same time he was checking. And we just kind of like had the moment, we just kind of looked at each other, and I was kind of like zipping up my trousers, and I buttoned my trousers, and I just went, "Oh, Jack Jester," and he went, "How you doing, pal? Let me pee." So he came in, he peed.
That sounded just like him.
And I went, should I ask for a picture now, or should I wait till he'd finished, or what? So he went outside and they came out, and I was with my pal. I said to Fraser, I went, "Jack Jester's in there peeing." He went, "No, he's not." And I went, "I bet you any money he walks out in 2 seconds with wet hands." And little did I know, out he comes, he's wiping his hands on his top and stuff. I said, "Let's go ask for a picture." And Fraser said, "Wouldn't he wait for him to dry his hands?" So we waited for it, and then we walked over to him, and he took a picture, and it was good. And we were drinking and stuff. We had a couple of drinks, and I just said, "Oh, it's my birthday. He went, "Happy birthday." And then Fraser's like, just keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, bless. I've met Fraser. That's really sweet.
You're brilliant. I love your stuff. You're brilliant. Just keep doing what you're doing. He's like, "Thanks, man. Thanks." That was the only thing.
Oh, you used to see Jester all the time in the Catty. Jamie went a few times, and he would, Jamie would, told me that he used to see Jester and Galloway there quite a lot, and
Yeah.
he spoke to them a couple of
I
times.
think I'd die if I saw Drew in a nightclub. Oh my god.
Oh man, like see, it was during that kind of phase when he'd come back to ICW.
Yeah.
But you know, he was properly built like a tank, and I never saw Galloway at the Catty, but Jamie did a couple of times, and I actually think he tried to like arrange a stag do for me, uh, where I would get beaten up by ICW wrestlers, and I think he spoke to Galloway and Jester about arranging it. And this is not
Wow.
for the relationship that and the woman I'm currently married to. This was a past failed relationship many years ago.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I think he tried to get something like that in place many years ago. But yeah, it's funny the proximity of these guys and girls in ICW and in UK wrestling. It feels like everyone's got a story like that to tell about, like your Jesters, your Galloways, your Grados, you know, people like that. There's always fun stories to come, and I've got a bunch more. But this is not the how many Scottish wrestlers have you met show. Well, not this week anyway. We should do that sometime though.
Yeah, that's a good one. They try and get as many people to listen as well, Scottish wrestlers. A bit like me when I tried to get Lionheart to watch CWA. This is part 2 of our SummerSlam main event run through. Of course, we did part 1 last week, so thanks to anybody who checked that one out. That was from 1987, 88 till 2000. And now we're going to start 2001 all the way to 19. We'll do the same sort of format going through it and stuff. Other than these matches that you might have watched this week, have you had a chance to check out anything else on the network or on YouTube or anything since we last spoke?
I did kind of briefly start kind of going back into my 2002 run, but I wanted to devote most of my time to this SummerSlam watch along. But what I am seeing a lot in the 2002 run is like the early days of Mattitude version 1.
Yeah, good
and
stuff.
It's really cool because his heel turn's actually really slow and developed at that time. He goes from still using the Hardy Boys music to, you know, he's not full on V1 with the fun entrance, but he's got the new music now, and he's like helping Brock Lesnar screw over the Undertaker on SmackDown. You know, this is cool stuff.
He gets involved with the Undertaker Unforgiven, doesn't he?
I don't. Well, I'm not there yet, but he has had a match
Oh.
with the Undertaker on SmackDown already, which is pretty cool. Like, you know, already then Matt Hardy was showing how creative he was, and I'm just glad that he's in AEW now. And I know some people don't think he's been used to his full potential in AEW, but I've enjoyed him so far. I just think that guy needs a platform, you know. And the fact is, he's not a spring chicken, so he's not going to carry the company. Like, I'm not saying he could never be world champion or anything, but he's not going to be their, you know, young buck star. Pardon the pun. Like, so he's there to be a big name, to be a big star, but I think he probably fundamentally wants to work with the younger guys, as he is doing, you know?
Yeah, you see him recently, Sammy Guevara hit him with a chair and they get cut really badly. That was brutal.
He looked like a gothic Cruella de Vil. Like, it was like, he looked like a drumstick lollipop, like half blood, you know?
Yeah, well, we'll try and not spend too much time on each individual one. But if you didn't check out last week's episode, basically we watched all the main events of every single SummerSlam from the first one in 1988 all the way to 2019, seeing the evolution of the business, seeing the evolution of the pay-per-view, and how it's really become the second biggest show of the year. And I think it still holds that stature. You know, obviously Royal Rumble's a big one. They always do that now in the baseball stadium and whatever.
Which
but
I like.
I like that too. It makes it different, yeah. But I just think that SummerSlam is always going to be like that sort of summer spectacular, that kind of secondary big pay-per-view. So I'm looking forward to this year's one to see what the main event is going to look like. Now the rumours are flying high.
Yeah.
So let's go back to 2001. One of my favourite years in wrestling, probably. In fact, if I had to pick, probably my favourite year in wrestling is 2001. And I had SummerSlam 2001 on video, right? But I don't know if you remember back in the day, but they used to do these like 2-packs. And it came, SummerSlam 01 came with the Hardy Boys Live for the Moment video. And what I would do with my wrestling figures at that age is I would take VHSs out their cases and make them the barricade around the ring.
That is genius.
Because the VHSs were black, like the barricades, right?
Yeah.
So I'd do like an entrance ramp and then do all like a circle around the ring. And I'd obviously leave a wee gap for me to sit. So I think in that stuff, I had lost the SummerSlam 01 tape. So I had like the video case, the double case of the Hardy Boys one, but I didn't have the SummerSlam one. So I don't really remember the show that much. Obviously, I've watched it, and obviously now I've gotten older and stuff. I know that Lance Storm and Edge have a really good match to open the show.
They do.
And of course, RVD and Jeff Hardy is an amazing match, and I just love their feud. But I do love this main event. Booker T and The Rock was a big match at the time. I love Shane McMahon getting involved. I love Paul Heyman and JR going back and forth. I love the APA getting involved. And I
Yeah.
love the finish. I love the finish so much. Booker T goes for the most electrifying move in all of sports entertainment. Obviously, the spinner Rooney.
Yep.
Rock kips up, rock bottom finish. What did you think of this one?
Yeah. No, it's a great match and it's a fun moment. I still vividly remember I watched this about a day or two after it happened in 2001 because a boy in my class, I was P6 or P7 at the time, and a boy in my class had taped it. So I watched a tape of the live pay-per-view at my granny's house, and it's such a nice memory. Like my dad and my granny, like gabbing away, like in the background, probably having a drink. And me and my brother Lewis just mesmerized by getting to watch SummerSlam so soon after it happened. It was almost,
Yeah.
to me, that was watching it live, in Scotland at that time in 2001. By this point, I knew that I was going to go to Rebellion because the tickets had been on sale. And Robert had asked me to come with him. So, like, I was getting pumped for it. And so following this was a big deal. The funny thing is, though, in building up to watching this main event, I was convinced that Austin and Angle would close the show because I do think that that is the better match.
Right.
And I love Austin and Angle, but it makes sense that they would want like a happy ending to the pay-per-view. They'd want to send everyone home happy. This was still relatively early days for the Invasion, so it would have been quite novelty to see The Rock face off the WCW champion and to win the WCW title on a WWF pay-per-view. And we don't need to get into the in defense of the Invasion stuff again. We had that rant a few weeks ago, but like,
full episode coming soon.
But yeah, this is a match that I would show people who criticize the Invasion. I would say, get this notions of Hogan and Nash out your mind and Goldberg, and just look at this for what it is. Two Hall of Famers. I know The Rock isn't there yet, but he is good as is. In going one-on-one at the main event of the second biggest event of the year, the biggest party of the summer, and they have a good competitive match. And I don't think Booker T's made to look weak. Like, he cheats and he cuts corners, but he's a bad guy. That's what he's supposed to do.
I think it looks great. It looks like a real main eventer in this match.
Yeah.
And I know we're not going to talk about defending the Invasion. However, this is one of the examples that makes me question people like JR and Paul Heyman and that slagging the Invasion. Because the crowd go mental when The Rock wins. And JR is screaming into the microphone how amazing it is that The Rock is the WCW champion. And obviously that's his job. He's obviously selling it and he's the best ever. But like, you have the charm of JR is that he's so real. And he says, what we think, and it's his passion that comes through. And I think that's as real as a call as ever. Like, I can't believe The Rock, one of the biggest stars in WWE, is the WCW champion, And I love this match. I love the angle. I love the year. I love this era. And if you're all right to move on, speaking of loving shows, I think SummerSlam 2002 is my favourite SummerSlam ever.
I think, for me, it's really tight between 02 and 2000 for me, but 2002 is just a great show. And I heard somebody say recently, I say recently, this was about 6 months ago I had this conversation, but there are people who like to think of the Attitude Era ending here.
Right.
Because, a lot of us talk about the Invasion or WrestleMania 17 or when it became WWE. Now, by this point, the business had been WWE for a while, but thematically, in terms of story and character, this was the end of The Rock's great, massive run. I know he'd come and gone a little bit with the Scorpion King and a few things here and there, but he wouldn't. By the time he would come back after this, he was like heel Rock, and it felt like that was him, kind of gearing up for his part-time every now and then appearances. And I know his 2003 run was significant, but it was still only a few months.
We talked about that, didn't we? We talked about that when you recommended Edge and Angle a few weeks, like a while ago, one of the earlier episodes of the podcast. You said that Edge and Angle from Backlash 02 was your match of the week, and it's a great match, and I recommend everybody checking it out. And I said that I think that might be the end of the Attitude Era for me, because those shows kind of still look like the Attitude Era, whereas I think Vengeance and King of the Ring and SummerSlam 02 are now the transition, are now in Ruthless Aggression. That's what I think, just because of the vibe of the show. But I totally get behind the fact that Rock's still there, Triple H and Michaels, and you know what I mean? But the way that Triple H and Michaels look, and the way that Angle and Mysterio look, and that sort of thing, to me, that's Ruthless Aggression full on.
It's I can totally get behind this being Okay, again, yeah, maybe you could argue that ruthless aggression has like been born at this point, but I feel like this was like the dividing line. This is like, we are definitely out of attitude now, and I know at
Yeah.
that show we've had Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, but this is Brock Lesnar beating The Rock is so symbolic of the rise of ruthless aggression, I think.
Yeah.
So it's just no surprise to me that there are people who see this as the dividing line, and it's one of those matches. It's maybe not a technical masterpiece, but when I watched it recently, it goes on for much longer than I thought it did, and it's more of a back and forth match than I remembered it being. And I just think for its symbolic, for its thematic importance, it's really really good.
I love it. I think it's a great match. It's so hard hitting and so in your face, and the crowd are so jacked because they kind of know Lesnar's winning, but it's
Yeah,
the same as like a streak match. Like
yeah.
Taker's winning, but you never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're more interested in how it plays out, and you're just drawn to see what it finally looks like. What's Brock Lesnar, this new up and comer, going to look like with the belt? How's he going to manage as the champion? And back then, people didn't know if he was going to work out. Obviously, he did, but
Yeah, yeah.
he was a very credible star. Chris, we'll have to pause just for a second. My buzzer's ringing.
Hello,
Okay?
there's the phone.
Yeah, 2 seconds.
Go get
2
the phone.
seconds.
Glenn is away to get the phone. His house phone is ringing. I hope everything's okay. We all appreciate house phones. I no longer have a house phone because it's
What the
2020.
hell are you talking about?
Who uses a landline in 2020?
That wasn't a landline.
it's-
That was the buzzer, you dingo.
Oh, really? I thought it was the phone.
No, I'm still living in a flat. I have bought a house, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm still not moved into it yet. So,
Do you have a moving date or no?
end of the month, we're gonna have a wee bit of disruption in a minute because when Kate and her pal arrive, they're
That's
gonna. Yeah, they're not gonna sit in here in the lounge. Where
Please.
I am,
Oh my God, Glenn, please get them on. Please get them over to the mic.
but...
Please. Just let them say
Luna-
hello.
The dog is gonna go crazy, right? So she's gonna go berserk. Oh, for God's sake! Right, hold on, 2 seconds. I realize they've not got keys. Hold on.
This is a wee impromptu run in here for the Wrestling Connection podcast. We're about to hear Glenn's lovely wife, who sings the jingles to the podcast, hopefully make an appearance. Also, Luna the dog, who is an Instagram sensation.
Well, this is quite the disruption, Mr. Moffat. The maker of the jingles is gonna swing round now.
Just waiting for the jingle lady. Oh, hello.
Hello, Jingle Lady is here.
Welcome to the show.
No problem. Thank you for having
How are you?
me. I'm good. How are you, Chris?
Very, very good. Thank you. It's so nice to hear you again.
Yeah, and you. It's so funny doing this like online.
No, I know. It's funny. I was just saying to Glenn, it's going to be weird when we're like in person because we're so used to just looking at our computer screens talking. But so now that you're a guest on the show, I wondered what your favourite SummerSlam was.
My favourite SummerSlam. My
Yeah.
favourite SummerSlam was the one that was
There was one on this
the
morning.
one
we were
on this
watching.
morning that had that death guy in it and the blonde guy in it and
The
Oh
big-
yeah,
the big
classic.
cage and the tables. Remember, he set them up quite nicely. I was like, he could do like events, So
Events
So
like
good.
parties and weddings and that sort of thing.
yeah, I would
Yeah,
hire
totally.
him. He can
I
do.
would hire
he
him as
can
well.
do it.
Listen.
Yeah, this is why we call Edge the ultimate opportunist.
Well, listen. We don't want to keep you, but I hope you enjoyed your day.
Well,
And
thank you.
thank you for the jingles because they make the show really.
No worries. The Jingle Lady is always here. All the Jingle Ladies. I'll say no more so that it doesn't cost you anything copyright, So
Yeah, please. Well, we're looking for a theme song actually. If you want to do a wee song.
I mean, well, I'm on the spot here right now, but
I'm not saying right now. No.
Give me a moment and I'll have a think. But I will pass you
improv
back.
a wee song.
Oh yeah. I mean, what have we got? We've
Got the
the,
toilet break one.
so what's it? The Wrestling Connection.
Yeah, that's the. What do you mean you don't know the name of my show?
That's the name.
You could. I mean, I'm not cool enough to do a rap.
That's
I
all right.
could-
Listen.
I'll leave it with me. Leave it with me. I'll have something
Okay.
for you. Don't you worry. I'm all over
That'll
that.
be your homework.
Ah!
Okay.
Right, I shall pass you back over to Glenn. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Alrighty,
See ya.
bye.
Could you please bring me another beer? Sure. Okay. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
I'm
Yeah,
not
by the way, episode 19 is by far the best moment of the show.
I mean, listen, I'm proud of our podcast, but not many wrestling podcasts have real living, breathing women on them. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Move
don't
on,
know
right.
how much of that you'll have heard, dear listener, but that was my dear wife, the woman behind the jingles on the pod. And she's the best, and she's the jingler. She's jingle bells, jingle all the way.
So, moving moving on, thank you to our special guest this week. I'd love to have her on for a full episode just to see if she could remember the name of the dead guy and the blonde man. But
So, if you couldn't guess, folks, she briefly watched a bit of 2008 SummerSlam, which we'll no doubt get to. So, we'll leave it, leave it to that. But yeah, the dead guy
that's
and
a
the
good one.
blonde
It's a
guy.
good one.
It is a great one, yeah.
SummerSlam 02, we'll move on, but SummerSlam 02 I think is my favourite one. And I think it's a lot to do with Shawn and Triple H having a screamer. I love the video package for that. And I think the most underrated, one of the most underrated SummerSlam matches ever, and maybe the most underrated pay-per-view opener of all time, Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio opening this show is a banger. And I remember, because now the way when you're younger, I think I mentioned this before, when you put on a DVD or a video or something, you might not watch the full show. You may be falling asleep, or you might just want something to watch. So like the opening and second matches of a lot of shows are really drilled into my mind, because sometimes I would just watch those matches. I watch this one constantly because I had this one in video as well. I love Angle and Mysterio on this show. And if you're going to watch one SummerSlam match this week that's quick and easy to watch, that's one to watch.
Nice one. Yes, I love the way that show begins. I love the Ray leaping from the ropes and does that kind of forward Hurricane Rana thing. Amazing match. Speaking of matches, which people either love or hate, SummerSlam 2003. Then this is interesting, Chris. Are you ready to move on to this? Yeah,
please. Yeah.
So I remember the build up to this one. So SummerSlam 03 is an Elimination Chamber match, folks. Triple H is actually injured at this point, and he's defending his World Heavyweight Championship against, let me try and roll this off on the winners. We've got Triple H versus Goldberg versus Jericho versus Shawn Michaels versus Kevin Nash versus Randy Orton. And
there you go.
It's the second ever Elimination Chamber match. And I remember, like, the story behind this was that the idea was that it was originally just supposed to be Triple H versus Goldberg, and that was what was originally booked. And that's when Triple H was going to drop the title to Goldberg, which, of course, we now know didn't happen until Unforgiven. However, Triple H was injured and couldn't really perform a good match, and the story goes, the legend goes, is that if he didn't want to drop to Goldberg in a unconvincing kind of quick rushed way, which is weird because that's kind of what Goldberg's known for, is those quick impactful matches. And maybe they should have done that if they did that with Triple H after the run that he'd had. Maybe that would have been better for Goldberg in the WWE. But anyway, I digress. So Austin, who's the co-GM, comes out and says that, I can't change that match, which Bischoff has booked, but I can add to it. And so he makes an Elimination Chamber match with all these other guys. And I remember a couple of things about this. I remember watching it for this was the first time I'd actually watched the match. And so up until this point, I remember people telling me that this was a rubbish Elimination Chamber match and it was crap and it's one of the worst ones in history. And I've heard that from a lot of people. And I watched it, and I don't think it's bad at all. I actually really enjoyed it, and I think they did a great job of working around Triple H's injury. I can understand why people don't like it, because the finish is a bit deflating, the way that Triple H just out of nowhere gets this sledgehammer. But a couple of personal stories around this one, real quick. I've got a good friend called Billy who me and Robert are still pals with to this day, and he's a huge Triple H fan. But he was at this stage when we were all 12 at this point. Pardon me, he was kind of full on like cheering the heels, cheering the baby faces, boo the heels. So he kind of abandoned Triple H at this point, and he was sick of Triple H being champion. I remember him telling me in the playground, "See, if he doesn't lose that title at SummerSlam, I'm stopping watching wrestling," which never, of course, happened. And he still watches wrestling. He's a great guy, Billy. And I also remember buying a plastic like wrestling ring at Tesco's around this time, and the guy at the counter was like, "Oh, you're going to watch SummerSlam?" And me lying said, "Yeah, I've ordered the pay-per-view. I'm 12 at this point. I'm not allowed to stay up that late." He goes, "Yeah, Goldberg's going to win." And I said, "No, nobody's been able to beat Triple H." And so, and of course Triple H keeps the title. But I don't know about you, man, but I loved this match. I loved the pacing of it. I loved the many stories in it, and I loved how it feels like an elimination chamber match. But then Goldberg comes in, and he's like pow pow pow. He takes people out, and he is so over. And the fans
Yep.
love this, and that's what keeps coming back to me about a lot of these matches from this era is that they would kill for that reaction now, and so
Exactly.
so it's I really really enjoyed this match. I can understand the hate, I can understand not liking the finish. It's a bit iffy and it's not as good as the first elimination chamber, but it's a good one.
I actually think it's one of my favourites, actually. Just for that reason, like it's kind of underground and no one really talks about it, and it was the second one. And I remember Austin announcing it on Raw and thinking it was a big deal. I love Triple H's biker shorts. I think they're really funny.
Yeah,
Because obviously he's pulled his groin into it, so it's a groin injury. So he has to wear longer shorts because that'll help. I don't know. I love the spot of Triple H coming out of the chamber and Michael super kicking him back in. I think that's great. I love Kevin Nash's short hair. First time you saw him with short hair.
That's right.
Yeah, I just love it. I don't know. There's Randy Orton's in it, and just he's a kind of like a wild horse.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wild horse.
I enjoyed Nash and Michaels having a brief kind of thing and their history being referred to. Like that was really cool. So it was good. But you mentioned sorry, I was about to segue, but you were about to say something there.
I was just about to say, remember I told you at the start of the podcast when, like, the very first episode, I talked about how I had, like, custom discs made. Like, I had, like, a compilation of matches and stuff. We had the second one made, and I had a couple of extra matches that I recently found and still works. And it's on the menu. It says Elimination Chamber 2. And it's this match is on there. So I've kind of got a soft spot for it as well. And I also remember in about 2009-ish, I think, when I started doing, like, DVD reviews on YouTube, I wanted to order this DVD, SummerSlam 2003, on DVD off eBay. And there was something wrong with, like, me ordering it, something wrong with the PayPal transition or something, so I had to go get my dad to help me. And my dad was like, you want to order this? And of course the cover is Sable wrapped in, like, the SummerSlam logo. And he's like, you want... So I don't know what age I was. I was pretty young. And he was like, you want to order this? And I was like, yeah, it's a pay-per-view. It's a pay-per-view. I swear, it's a pay-per-view. Like, I was trying to defend it, you know?
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's everything's covered. What was your segue? How was your segue?
It was like you mentioned Randy Orton, and that takes us nicely into 2004. And I guess there's probably not a lot to say about this match. I'm keen to get your thoughts on it. For me, this is another kind of match which is important historically, which I'd never actually watched all the way through. And so, I really enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed how hot the crowd was for it. There's a few bits that are really difficult to watch. I'm thinking particularly Chris Benoit's dive through the ropes.
Oh my God.
And, obviously, we all know what happened to Chris Benoit. And so when you see stuff like that, it's difficult to watch because there was no, there were no strings or smoke or mirrors there, folks. That was full on impact. It was a big deal for Orton's career, but it wasn't really, we look at that historically. Randy Orton beating Chris Benoit after a few months of a title reign for his first world title at such a young age. That wasn't really the launching pad to a stardom that everyone had envisioned. Yeah. He didn't really become a star for a while after that, and a lot of people would agree that it was a failed experiment, that first title run. And it's not as if he went on to doom and gloom, but I would argue that Batista ended up filling the role for the next year or so. And it would be, a couple of years before Randy Orton would taste the kind of the world title kind of gig again,
I don't think I could call it a failed experiment because I don't think it was to be Randy Orton is now the main man. I think it was to turn Randy Orton face and it was to get him out of Evolution. But really, when you look at it big picture, they're really setting up for Batista and Triple H at WrestleMania. Yeah. Because the Triple H turning on Batista, kind of behind the scenes, starts with this because Batista sees how jealous Triple H is, the fact that someone else is champion, and Batista he's kind of getting used. Batista's like, hang on a second, I want to be the world champion. Is this what you're going to do to me? And it leads throughout that kind of winter, and it goes to the Elimination Chamber in 2005, where Triple H fails to, help Batista win, and Batista ends up helping Triple H win just as usual. And then the Royal Rumble and all that stuff, and it goes to that. It's just an amazing story. And I rewatched it all. I was doing like the whole watch through thing. About a year ago, I kind of got to this kind of time, 2005, when it kind of escalates to. It's such an underrated story. It's so long and like well thought out and stuff. The booking is very, very clever. And I guess they were probably doing it by the seat of their pants as they were going. Yeah, we'll turn Randy face and we'll see what happens there, and hopefully we can get to Batista. But it looks like they've really meticulously thought this out, and if you can look at it from a bigger picture and go, that's a great experiment, because you get Batista to feel sympathy, the fans start getting behind Batista because you can see these things. It's like, dramatic irony. You can see it, but the characters don't,
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It is really, really good stuff. And this SummerSlam match is good. Again, I haven't watched it that much. You mentioned that dive with Benoit, things like this, and the ladder match with Jericho he has, and some of the Money in the Bank matches he was in, and that sort of thing, where he's just taking these dives to the floor and to the off ladders and stuff. It's kind of hard to watch. But Randy Orton was becoming a big star. I love his face run. I know people don't like it, and I know he kind of changes back to heel less than a year later, I think, because then he wrestles. Yeah, he does less than a year because he wrestles Taker at WrestleMania.
That's right.
And what I didn't know, when I got to WrestleMania 21 recently with Orton, is that he's still kind of a face at that time. He's kind of going through a long transition, but just because no one was going to boo The Undertaker at WrestleMania,
Yeah.
But yeah, good match. Nothing special, but just a nice one to go back to. But speaking of special, I think SummerSlam 2005 is criminally underrated as a pay-per-view. And I've mentioned before, it's a really odd choice for me. But this 2005 SummerSlam is something that I would watch all the time when I went on holiday with my family.
Yeah.
I had this DVD, and when you go on holiday with your family, your folks, and your relatives and stuff, like sometimes they can, if you're taking ages to kind of get ready, or you need to wait for everybody to get ready at the same time so you can go for dinner or whatever. I would always, I don't take long to get ready. I just throw my clothes on and stuff like that, and then I'd sit about and wait. And a lot of the times I would try and read a book, or I'd try and play, my Game Boy or Nintendo DS or something like that. But a lot of the times I would watch some wrestling on like a sort of portable DVD player. And for some reason, on holidays, on like a balcony of a hotel or in my own room in this hot weather, it would be SummerSlam 05. And I don't know why. There's nothing really special about the show. I just think it start to finish is so enjoyable. There's great matches, there's hidden gems, there's quick matches, and there's Hogan and Michaels, which is a very controversial match and divides a lot of opinions. Right, but it's a big, it feels like a big match, Hogan versus Michaels, Icon versus Icon. Jericho and John Cena have this amazing match where the crowd are so electric. The first time, and I'll stand by this, the first time where it was pretty 50-50 with Cena. And then Orton and Taker have a great WrestleMania rematch. Bunch of good stuff, and not to mention Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in one of my favourite ladder matches ever. Such a good show, but I guess we're talking more about the main event, and I've got a feeling you don't like it as much as I do, this main event. What do you think about Michaels and Hogan?
Chris, I'm going to tell you something right now. I had never seen this match. Right. I was following wrestling when it happened. So I would watch the YouTube clips, or not even the YouTube clips. I watched the clips on WWE.com at the time when I was 14, when this match was being built up to, and the Michaels heel run and stuff. And I was excited for the match. I knew I would never get to see it because I just didn't get to see pay-per-views at that time. And then through reading Power Slam, and then in more recent years from watching like YouTube channels like, What Culture and Cultaholic and Wrestle Talk, and hearing people talk about this match, I just kind of decided that I wouldn't like this match, because I kid you not, Chris, every review online I have seen of this match, or anytime anyone's discussed it, they talk about it as a bad match, and they say that it is characterized by Michaels overselling. And the clips of Michaels overselling are all I've seen, because that's all that gets played back.
The big boot and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then you watch the match, and the overselling is actually hardly done. And I sat and watched this. Chris, I have not been so pleasantly surprised by a match in this run, more so than with this match. I loved Hogan and Michaels. I went into this expecting it would be a pile of crap, it'd be over in 10 minutes, that, Michaels was just going to ruin the match by taking the mic, which is how everyone characterizes it. And I'm sorry, am I watching a different match here? That's not what happens. Yes, there are moments where he oversells, but within the context of what that presentation of that match was, there's so much going on. The fans are so into it. They are so
nuclear.
Pumped.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. It deserves to be the main event. And, it's one of Hogan's last brilliant matches. They both do really well. And obviously I'm aware of the politics behind it and the story behind it, and how Hogan didn't want to put Michaels over, and he didn't want to do rematches, even though he said he would. Don't care. Watching the match as it is, just as a wrestling fan, not a wrestling journalist or anything like that, just taking it for what it is, I'm seeing two guys go at it, and it worked, and the fans went bananas. And when Hogan fights all this adversity, he's covered in blood, his hair's gone red,
Yep.
and he pops up and he does his routine and he gets him with the leg
so
drop.
good.
Like, I'm kidding you, Chris. Not kidding you. Like, I genuinely thought I was going to hate this match from everything I'd read, and I actually feel a bit deceived and misled by all these supposedly credible wrestling YouTube channels and reviews that I've read and clips of the match. They've just presented it as this relatively disrespectful match where Shawn Michaels decided just to ruin it to get his own back, and that's just not what this match is. It is a good match, and it's an excellent match, and I loved it.
Also, you hear about, overselling is a bad thing. Do you know who's in the match?
It's Hulk Hogan! That's the whole thing. He's the immortal.
God, anyway. Yeah, listen, I know I say this quite a lot on the show for recommendations, and I'm not recommending anything this week. But there's a reason why this is maybe my second favourite SummerSlam of all time. And I think if you're looking for just something to watch, to put on, this is a wall-to-wall, action-packed, easy-to-watch show you'll not be disappointed by. There's wee surprises that you forget about. There's great wrestling. And this match, I don't care. You can call any match bad, but if the crowd are going that bananas, it is not a bad match. Drives me nuts.
Exactly.
Right.
There you go. 2006, Chris.
Yeah, we'll try and move on. You want to take toilet break? Are you okay?
We'll do a quick one.
Toilet break.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, thanks for listening for the toilet break. Now, SummerSlam 2006. Funny story with this one that I think you'll appreciate because you know one of the participants in the story. So, SummerSlam 2006 happened on August 20th. And that was the first time that I'd been alive and a wrestling fan that SummerSlam happened on my birthday, right?
Nice.
So, back in the day, when wrestling was bigger, you would hear wrestling advertised everywhere, right? I kind of mentioned that WrestleMania 24 was advertised in a phone box in this kind of worser area of where I stay. And I was like, I can't believe it's on that phone box. That's so random. So when wrestling was a bigger deal than it is now, I guess, then it would be all over the place, newspapers and stuff like that. So it just so happened that they were talking about SummerSlam on the radio on one day, right? And it was an advert for it or whatever, and they were talking about how you can check it out on pay-per-view, and it's going to be on August 20th, 2006. And I remember sitting and I was in the passenger seat of my car, my mum was driving. And I was like, Mum, they're talking about my birthday on the radio, and they're talking about the wrestling, so I was all happy and stuff. And around this time, this classic song by Shakira was released. Are you familiar with Hips Don't Lie?
That is my jam, Chris.
Okay, so it sounds like this for those who don't know. Right? So that song comes on, and that wee opening wee trumpet bit, and as the advert finishes playing, there'll be sometimes when they're talking about something, they'll kind of lead into the next song as they're talking, and then before the chorus starts or they start singing, they'll stop the advert or whatever.
Yeah.
So the guy on the radio was talking about SummerSlam, talking about how John Cena's going to wrestle Edge and all this stuff. And then all you hear is this. So my mum was like, oh my God, they're playing John Cena's theme on the radio.
And what did your mum, who I love, what did she say?
No, my mum said that. My mum said, that's John Cena's theme, isn't it?
Oh my God, I thought you said that. That's even better.
No, my mum was like, it's John Cena's theme, isn't it? I was like, no, Mum, that's Shakira.
Amazing.
It kind of sounds like it a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Your time is up. Oh, God. Ever since, anytime I hear that song, every time it comes to the radio and in clubs or whatever, I always think about that and laugh. My mum was trying, she was trying to make a wrestling joke. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So funny. And it was on my birthday, that SummerSlam. So, but other than that, I have no recollection of SummerSlam whatsoever.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I always thought it was Batista versus Booker T in the main event because I had this vision in my head of Batista winning the title. Yeah. But I was shocked when I went back because I'm really good with random wrestling knowledge, so I was kind of annoyed that I got this wrong. And I went back and I saw it was Edge and Cena, and my God, they have a great match here. Talking about the whole story of what were you going to say? It was a good story.
Great match, great story, hot crowd, and the Cena Edge feud is something that I just remember so fondly. I think it's really a really important step in both those men's careers, particularly Cena's, because Edge had been established for a bit longer at this point, but Cena was being propelled for them being the megastar that he is today, and this is it. And the funny thing for me is I was 15 at this time. I was really smarky and I was wanting to boo Cena a lot, even though I was respecting him. I still, if I was in a room of wrestling fans, I would be going, oh, Cena sucks, so he does. Um, and
Yeah.
uh, and so some people see that this era as a bit of a decline for the WWE because the Attitude Era had gone. But my God, we've said this already today, but they would kill for this sort of crowd reaction right now. And I'm not talking about the fact that they have no crowd. I'm just talking about in
Yep.
general for the programming when they do have crowds. They would love this kind of back and forth. They're in Cena's hometown. They're so hot for Cena, but there is still a contingent of Cena sucks there as well.
Yeah, totally. I just think I love their matches. I love their feud, and the match is great. Story about Edge can't be disqualified, so Lita manages to sneak on like brass knucks or whatever. So
Yeah.
and the finish is great. Hits him in the back of the head with the knucks. Really cool finish. So really
Nice.
good one and underrated, I think. SummerSlam 07 from East Rutherford, New Jersey, the famous
Nice.
Izod Center.
Mhm.
John Cena defeats Randy Orton. Another great match. Electric atmosphere is in my notes here. And I watched this one recently. I think it might have been one of my matches of the week a few weeks ago, because I was going through this sort of ruthless aggression era sort of thing into the WWE that we know now. But I think this is an underrated time in WWE. I think this is an underrated match. And it's a really interesting show. This had both Triple H and Rey Mysterio's returns. I remember that being a big deal. But what did you think watching this match back?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, by this point, I was still profoundly a teenager and very smarky. So at the time, I remember being really kind of gunning for Orton publicly, but still inherently being a Cena fan, like secretly. I love the match, and again, like I know people who are maybe a little bit older who see this era as the downside of the WWE, but you just need to look at how hot the crowd are for this. Cena and Orton are megastars by this point, but they're not the megastars that they would become. And, but they're still good enough to main event SummerSlam. And, this is not the first time that this wasn't their last SummerSlam match. They would wrestle a couple years later at SummerSlam. I really enjoyed this match for what it was. It was brutal. It was physical. But I think like a lot of these matches, it's really the crowd that gave it just that extra kind of je ne sais quoi, that quality that made it feel like a SummerSlam main event. I really enjoyed this one.
Me too. Again, another recommendation for this week. Then SummerSlam 2008 features a Hell in a Cell match of the dead guy versus the blonde man. And this is a SummerSlam I talked about recently, where it's like the titles aren't even, no one is even talking about the titles. It's really weird. Like Triple H and Khali have a match for the title, when I think it's JBL and CM Punk. But the two main events are non-title matches: Undertaker and Edge in a Hell in a Cell, and then the super babyface match, which is Cena versus Batista. Two great matches, two very different matches, and definitely go out your way to check these ones out as well. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a Hell in a Cell match, which I think I've watched once before. When the network first came out, many years ago, I did a kind of an HD pay-per-view streak where I watched all the kind of pay-per-views from, I think, WrestleMania 24 onwards. And this also, obviously, I came across this one, and I'd forgotten that like this is a Hell in a Cell match, which is kind of post the era of them doing Hell in a Cell top of the cage bumps, which they have come back to a certain degree now. And they kind of tease it with the cell breaking, but boy, do they compensate with this. And Edge and Taker had such great chemistry, and I think everyone would probably agree that their best match is the WrestleMania match, but this is an absolute scorcher, and they really compensate for the fact that they can't throw someone off the cell by almost turning it into a TLC match. And that's what I love about this match, is it feels like a combination of the two. And I'm surprised to this day that they haven't gone berserk and just booked a Hell in a Cell TLC match, because it's so easy. You could easily pull that off, I'm sure. Not easily, but
that'll be the next pay-per-view. WWE TLC Hell in a Cell.
It sounds silly, but that's so plausible. It's unreal. We had the greatest match ever this year. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, big fan of this match. It's a crazy kind of crash, bang, boom, whop spot fest. And again, another really hot crowd.
This always reminds me of my dad watched this match recently. So I think in 2015. When it was like the Undertaker's 20th anniversary, oh, it'd be more than 20, but there was like a maybe 25 year anniversary thing for like Undertaker's debut at the Survivor Series. They did this big thing and did like specials on the network and stuff. And I must have been out somewhere. My mum must have been out. I don't know, but my dad was just watching like random old matches on the network. and he texted me and he was like, I just watched Undertaker and Edge Hell in a Cell. Never seen it before. It was so good. I just remember, like, my dad's just randomly found this Hell in a Cell match and watched it and loved it. I just thought that was cool.
It's also the first match in the series that we've watched in HD because 2008 is the year that they turned to that. So I noticed that change in the aesthetic, and it just feels much more like today's product.
It's funny, isn't it? It's totally weird. SummerSlam number 22 was from the Staples Center. First time of that long, I don't know how many year run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year run. Yeah, 6 year run to in the Staples Center in LA. CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy for the world title in a TLC match. I love this match so much.
Oh my God,
watched it recently. It's like I feel like I knew that Jeff was leaving. I feel like I heard a rumor or something back in the day, but I don't know. When I watched it, I kind of knew he wasn't going to win, but I just had that wee hope that he would, you know.
Yeah.
And the match is so good. And of course, it goes on last because Undertaker returns afterwards. And it's this big pop, but yeah. I mean, even before with Cena and Orton have a great match as well. But again, the heel wins, so they didn't put it on last. And that's the match I was kind of talking about a couple of weeks ago, where they have all these different ways that Orton Strap retain the title. It's so good as well. Another really good show.
I really enjoyed this TLC match. And one thing, like, obviously we can point to the spots and the crazy risks and the crowd that just loves Jeff. No More Words being his theme music. But something kind of maybe an underrated thing that I enjoyed about this match was the combination of Jim Ross and is it Todd Grisham on Jim Ross?
You literally just read my mind. I was about to ask you, what do you think of Todd Grisham on commentary?
I thought they worked really well together, and I really enjoyed it because it felt like a bit of the old and the new. And it's just I kind of sometimes I miss Todd Grisham, you know that, and I miss Bite This, which he used to host.
What is TNA? Nobody watches TNA.
Sting just signed with TNA. What do you think Vince McMahon thinks about that? I don't think he cares.
I think he sounds like a reporter. I think. I think he does a good job. A bit like Coach. I think he does a good job. But like he does have that moment where Jeff, I don't know why I always think about it, Jeff does the swanton and he goes, "Oh my God, I don't believe what I just saw." That was your Todd Grisham impression of the podcast.
He needs to do the next intro, surely. Come on.
Oh my God, that'd be a belter. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to look into it.
Let's do it. SummerSlam 2010. Again, we mentioned earlier on is one that I remember disliking, and I have never watched again. And I didn't watch it for this run through. It was that I broke the rules. I didn't watch it because I am currently on a 2009-10 kind of watch through, and I've just got to Elimination Chamber 2010. So I'm saving myself for a couple of weeks' time when I get to SummerSlam and I'll watch it again. But I remember being miffed by the fact that the Nexus didn't win. Of course, they couldn't win because Brett was in the match and Daniel Bryan was coming back, and it was SummerSlam. But I really think they should have, and I think they've really shot themselves in the foot by not having them go over here because they were so cool and the buzz was there, and I don't know why they never done it.
Well, and lots of people have been on bigger podcasts have been talking about this recently because with Retribution being a thing in WWE right now, people are comparing them to the Nexus. And also Barrett has come out recently and said that they wanted to do a Nexus reunion at WrestleMania this past year before.
What is that about?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and there's also a fan theory that Retribution are the Nexus because Heath Slater's in there and he was just released, and never mind the fact that he's with Impact. There is a fan theory that I've read that they are the Nexus, but like what I'll say about it is this: absolutely, the Nexus should have won, and that does kind of cast a shadow over this match. But this match is a lot of fun because the fans are really into it, and it's a testament to how over the Nexus was. But for me, the sentimental reason why I love this match is not like the hot crowd or the exposure and the platform that these young guys got, and or the fact that the Daniel Bryan got this amazing like opportunity to come back. It's Bret Hart's little portion in the ring, because people really look down on his 2010 run. Legally, he wasn't really allowed to wrestle because he'd already won a lawsuit with his insurers by claiming that the kick to the head had caused from Goldberg had stopped his career, which it did. Like he can't wrestle like he used to, but he probably could have physically done a little bit more if he'd been allowed to, but legally he just wasn't in position because he would have been countersued. And he was actually taken off TV for a while in 2010 because Lloyd's of London, his insurers, got really iffy about how physical he was being, being the US champion, beating the Miz, all this kind of stuff. Unlike his match with Vince at WrestleMania 26, in this match, he actually does a few more moves. He doesn't really take any bumps, but he does more moves. Like he does like the suplexes and things. And it was just really nice. Even though he's there and he's in a t-shirt and jorts, it's like you get that last little glimpse of the Hitman, you know, and
Yeah,
that's what I think about whenever I think of this match.
I don't remember this at all, but he was on the Bump this week. I don't know if you watched the Bump on the network.
It's all right.
For me, it's a bit too long.
Mhm.
I think it's like the idea of a morning show. It's kind of what the Fox show should have been, you know, like a kind of panel show. And they kind of have some really good interviews on there. They had Taker on there, and they had AJ and Jeff Hardy's been on recently. And they had Brett on it, and they were talking about he was like Mr. SummerSlam, and they were talking about all his great matches and stuff. And they included this match, and you can see his face light up when they talk about it. And I always just thought like maybe Brett didn't really rate that sort of time because obviously maybe like Vince just wanted to use him, and obviously he wasn't able to, and he doesn't really do anything and stuff. I just always thought Brett always talks about his glory days, and you know, rightfully so, because he is one of the greatest ever. And I'm kind of developing a love for Brett more as I've gotten older. I just admire him so much in terms of his work. And again, he does take it too seriously, but sometimes that could be good. I don't know. But when I think about this, and he kind of talks about this match and stuff, and he's really happy to talk about it. He says it's really nice memories, the fact to get in there and they got to get that crowd reaction again and that sort of thing. And he said the guys were really good. Like John Cena was great with them, and Heath Slater's bumping around for him and stuff like that. So it's nice to know that he looks back on that with fond memories, you know. Because
Yeah.
Brett can be quite negative, you know. So it's nice to know that he likes that. And yeah, I actually, because I watched them on the Bump, I watched this documentary last night on the network.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't watched it in so long, and my God, it's different. Like when that DVD came out, everyone was like, "Oh, it's the greatest ever." But you watch it now, and you compare it to some of the documentaries now, it's nowhere near as good as the ones now. But at the time, it was mental because it was like the first Brett interview in years, you know. So it's nice to know, and I can't wait to go back and check SummerSlam 2010 out for that. There is a moment on Raw though where like they have this big altercation with the Nexus and stuff, and the crowd are going mental. The whole building's shaking. I don't know if you've seen that clip on Raw. But like Edge is in there, and you can see Edge. He's doing the thing with the hair, and he's pulling the hair, and he's feeling it and stuff. So, like it's a old school kind of reaction. So,
Yeah,
another good one to check out if you're looking for something to watch. Moving on to SummerSlam 11, fond memories of this one.
Oh, for sure. The
Nothing
Summer of
much.
Punk.
Summer of Punk, man. Just like no one was cooler at the time, and the Punk Cena matches will never get old. My God, you want to talk about good chemistry?
Yeah, this is it. We've already talked about Cena versus Edge in this show in this episode today, but I will maintain and I will defend. You know, Cena's had some great opponents: Edge, AJ Styles, like just to name two. The Rock, but Punk for me, those two. Like that was Cena's best matches, his best feuds, or my favorite, my sentimental favorites, and with AJ maybe being a very close second. But I loved the Summer Punk, and I loved the Cena matches. I mean, we all fondly remember Money in the Bank, but this is a great match as well. And it was,
Oh yeah,
we were all hooked, weren't we? At this point, I was 20 years old watching this, and like watching, trying to get like an illegal copy of it from my student flat like the morning after it because I was so excited for it. I love the idea of champion versus champion. My only regret about that storyline is that I wish Punk had been gone for longer, and I wish that they just had the goal to let him show up on Impact or TNA rather at the time. I wish they'd really go and pushed it as far as they could. But it's a great match, and sometimes I forget about the Del Rio stuff at the end.
or the Kevin Nash stuff.
Yeah, of course. Like I often just think about Punk and Cena, but there's a lot of moving parts to this match. But it's a great match. It's maybe not their best. I prefer Money in the Bank and their 2013 Raw match more, even their Night of Champions match more. Yeah. But it's still a great match.
The Kevin Nash stuff blew my mind at the time. I remember I saw Kevin Nash coming into the ring before he kind of made it to the ring.
And I said Kevin to my Nash dad, in a lot of situations, mate.
Yeah, I know. I know. But this SummerSlam thing was right after I met him. It was right after I walked in and I'm getting changed. Call back to the archives. Like literally a couple months before, he was sitting next to me taking off his socks, and now he's in SummerSlam, you know. I remember me and my dad watched this match live, and it was 4 a.m. And I said to my dad, I said, Kevin Nash just came into the ring, thinking maybe I was like sleep deprived. And he's like, what? Like, no, he never. And then Kevin Nash is just standing there. So random. That's my big homie. I saw a clip on Instagram of this match, and you know Triple H was the special guest ref for this one.
Yeah.
So Punk goes to the top rope and he holds up the belt and stuff, and he must like see someone he knows in the crowd, and he kind of references like the Money in the Bank cash in before the match starts. He kind of does like this thing with his hand, like the cash in. He says it's happening tonight, looking at one of his pals in the crowd. And the camera cuts to Triple H. And you can see Triple H looking at him going, wait, what are you doing? And he kind of looks to see who he was talking to. And Triple H just looks so miffed. And I was like, I'd never noticed that before. Someone pointed out on Instagram, and I was like,
I didn't know that either. That's awesome.
I'll send you a wee link.
Please do.
August 19th, 2012, SummerSlam 012, SummerSlam 012, Lesnar versus Triple H, the perfect storm. This, because my birthday is August 20th, have I mentioned that before?
Yeah. I was at Rebellion 2001.
I met Kevin Nash with socks off. August 19th, obviously being the day before, I managed to talk my mum and my dad to let me stay off school on the Monday because it was my birthday, so I could watch SummerSlam live. So I was able to watch this match live and this whole show live, and I remember staying up live, knowing it was like now it was 4 a.m, it was my birthday officially, and I remember sitting down and I went, okay, let's see some blood. Because obviously Lesnar had destroyed Cena at Extreme Rules. I just thought it'd be like this bloodbath with Triple H, and it wasn't that at all. And I remember being really disappointed. What did you think?
Yeah, similarly, I was so intrigued by this match because, you know, Lesnar being back was still really novelty. He had only wrestled Cena at this point and lost, which, you know, I understand why he lost, but I still disagree with that decision. You know, I think Lesnar really should have won that match. But anyway, like, you know, Lesnar's initial run in the WWE, this was the guy that on mainstream television he never ever collided with in a match. Like, he obviously, you know, there's the more obscure stuff like the Global Warning Tour where he had it was Brock, Triple H, and The Rock, but most people hadn't seen that. So I just remember, I think it was at Jamie's watching this one live, and Jamie was exhausted. I think he'd been working that day. We both worked at McDonald's at the time. And he had to go and sleep because he could not stay awake, and he just said, "I'm going to sleep, everybody." Like, he's hosting people at his flat for this show. It's like, "I'm off to sleep. Wake me up when it's Lesnar and Triple H." And sure enough, the match happens, and it's fine. But I expected, perhaps too optimistically, something a bit more brutal than what it was. I think their WrestleMania, actually, I think my favorite of their series was probably the Extreme Rules, the cage match.
I think so too, actually. Yeah,
and I don't look at any of their. I actually don't think they had particularly good chemistry, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree.
But you know, there's a dream match that had to have happened, so I'm glad it happened. I think because their chemistry wasn't so good, it's a shame that they had to close the show. And maybe because who did because Punk was champion by this point. I can't even remember.
It's a triple threat: Punk, Cena, and Big Show.
That's right. You know, that probably should
random
be the main
again.
Event. But you know, it's fine, and I'm glad those matches happened. But you know, I look much more fondly on SummerSlam 13 than I do SummerSlam 12.
I think SummerSlam 13 is one of the best SummerSlams ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in a kind of revived peak fandom at this point because me and all my pals like Jamie and that, we were all going to ICW regularly at this point and we were loving it. And we were often meeting up to watch pay-per-views live at this point. I was in Eastern Europe when the show happened, and I had very limited internet access. And the morning after SummerSlam, I had my iPad. I had like the iPad one, like the first iPad, and I found some really grainy, blurry videos of the main event. And if folks, if you don't know what the main event is, SummerSlam 13, it is John Cena and Daniel Bryan. No, that's a lie. No,
yes,
right. Sorry, I doubted myself for a second. In the main event, and it's one of those matches where, like, it's a shame because I wonder if Daniel Bryan only won because of Cena's injury. I think that's probably the case, but it also thematically does feel like a big turning point because Bryan had come out of the Team Hell No stuff and had really, like, very quickly felt like a main event star again, you know, and not main event,
crazy.
Not on the level that he was when he was world champion, you know, when he was in 2011 and 2012, but it felt like on a different kind of level he was the main event star. And the thing I remember about this match is watching it on that grainy iPad and then only getting to the 1, 2, 3 and then just deciding to turn it off then because the internet was so temperamental where I was in the world.
Yeah.
And then going home to Scotland thinking that Daniel Bryan had just kept the title. I had no idea about the cash-in.
Yeah. It was kind of heartbreaking, the cash in. I've always been an Orton fan, so I wasn't too heartbroken, but I just wanted Bryan to win it so much, and it was so organic. Like, remember, like the thing was like Cena could choose his opponent; he could choose anybody he wants, and like everybody was chanting for Daniel Bryan and stuff, and like Twitter was going mental. And I
Yeah.
think that was like the first time that it was really like, okay, we'll just do what you want, from WWE. And
Yeah.
they just gave us Daniel Bryan, and like I talked about it before. I love matches where there's like an injury where you try to like work around it and stuff. Like Sami Zayn's injury when he wrestled Cena, or even
Yeah.
Kurt Angle at SummerSlam 2000. They try and work around it to see how they adapt, And the fact that Cena's legitimately injured here is fascinating, and they pull off an amazing match, 4.5 stars if ever, It's so good, and then not to mention Lesnar and Punk having a street fight, which is great. Del Rio and Christian have a great match. Kane and Bray Wyatt have an Inferno match, which I inspired because I asked Kane about it in November of 2012 when I met you. So there you go. Great SummerSlam. Highly recommend you check it out this week as well. SummerSlam 2014 is Lesnar versus Cena. This was the last one at the Staples Center, and I just couldn't believe how much he just destroys Cena. It's crazy, and I knew Lesnar was going to win, but I just had no clue how convincing it would be.
You say that you knew Lesnar was going to win. I remember going into this not knowing for sure. And the thing is, this was the birth of the Lesnar that we know now. Because he's often characterized in video packages now as this destructive machine. But like he had beaten the streak that same year, but he hadn't done it in a one-sided affair. It was a back and forth match. And I remember being gobsmacked watching this match because nobody had thrown Cena about like this ever.
It was mental.
And this was the first time that we saw Suplex City. This was the first time that we saw John Cena being treated the way it was. And it was such a novelty. And it's funny to think back at when that really felt special. And I think Brock still is an attraction. He still has like a lot of value. And there's always a degree with Brock now that it could go either way. You never really know. Like, and you look no further than, WrestleMania 2018 when he beat Roman and nobody saw it coming,
I couldn't believe it.
And so obviously we'll kind of touch upon that soon, but the thing is like that match blew me away and people don't like it. I remember Robert hated it because of all the suplexes over and over again, but I still fondly remember this match because is it your traditional wrestling match? Is it your traditional Cena or Lesnar match in terms of 2014? No, but it was so different. And it blew me away. And I'm a fan.
Yeah, I love that one. SummerSlam 2015. I have lots of fond memories about this one.
Yeah.
It was the first one at the Barclays Center, which was a big deal at the time because also the night before NXT did their first big takeover.
Yeah.
And I kind of told that story a couple of weeks ago how I was on my first ever night out to a club, and I made it home in time to see the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Because that was my priorities. But also, so obviously, this was a Sunday, obviously, for SummerSlam. And I started college. I started drama school on the Monday.
Yeah.
So I was all nervous and stuff about starting this new chapter in my life and stuff. So I didn't watch it live. So I was like panicking going to this new chapter in my life and this new starting point, meeting all these new people and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was stressed and nervous and panicky and stuff like that. But like the whole day I just had in my head, I was like, it's going to be okay because as soon as this is over, I get to watch SummerSlam. And that was like the thing that kept me going. It kept me going. I get to go see SummerSlam. And it really helped me through it. So anytime, like the way the show looks and the theme song, Cool for the Summer by Demi Lovato, still have a pure soft spot for the song. And it's brilliant. I came home, watched it with my dad. It's such a fun show. It's nothing that nothing blow away, but the main event with Taker and Lesnar, I sometimes forget this feud even existed.
Yeah.
And I just think the finish is so weird. But there you go.
I mean, my favorite Lesnar Taker match will always be No Mercy 2002, but this is my second favorite. I love this match. Yeah, the finish is weird with the whole referee weirdness and the calling for the bell when he didn't really.
Yeah.
But talk about wanting to redeem yourself for the WrestleMania 30 match. This is an angle, and this is a series of matches they did not touch upon in that Last Ride documentary. But Taker was looking for redemption after a lot of these matches, and you can understand why he would want to redeem himself after WrestleMania 30 with him getting concussed. This was a great match.
Do you not think after getting to know Taker a lot more in the Last Ride, you can imagine that he was the one that went to Vince and said, we need to fix that streak match? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Vince McMahon wants to make money, and so as long as he thinks his stars can pull it off, then he's going to want to book those matches, isn't he?
Totally, and I think they do pull off. I think it's great. I love the fact that Taker's coming in doing like his eye roll thing, for the lights, and Lesnar attacks him. Like no one did that, no one attacked Taker before he got his gear off,
And we have to
really
mention the fact that the moment has been memed and gifted the
Oh, yeah.
the crazy faces that they do. I love it. I love it. I just love that so much.
I love how that's become like the number one wrestling meme now. You know what I mean? Like for years it was like the Shockmaster or whatever, but now it's that.
Yeah, it was so funny because you expect Lesnar to do that, but for Taker to then reciprocate was just hilarious.
No, but the funny part is that it's Taker kind of trying to take the piss out of Lesnar, but it just looks ridiculous because it's Taker.
Oh dear! But speaking of Lesnar, he also main evented 2016.
He does, and I think this is the first pay-per-view of the era that we know now. Where like everything is so meticulous, and it's this new wave of young stars, and just the way it looks and stuff. And by the way, hearing Randy Orton versus Brock Lesnar commentated by Morrow was so cool.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I just thought Morrow was great, and just like
Morrow for me has just got such a big fight feel. He's so credible and so legit because he does call real sports. Like he called them Mayweather and McGregor, didn't he? Like he does like combat fighting. So I think he adds a degree of legitimacy, and I just would love to see him get the chance to do more high profile matches like this. And this match
press by
brutal.
Lesnar. Yeah, he's so good, man.
It's brutal, but he really sells it.
What did you make of the finish of this one? It's random, isn't it?
What is it? The stoppage, the blood, and
Lesnar just hardly elbows him in the head, and just Orton is gushing.
Sorry, I find it hard to watch. It's also funny that they kind of tease a Shane McMahon Lesnar match.
Yeah, did you know? Do you know when Lesnar F5's Shane? Do you know what Paul Heyman says? He goes, "Oh my God, what did you do? What did you do?" Which is what he said to Robert.
Oh my God. And this was only about 3 weeks after he met Robert.
So there you go. I noticed that when he said it. I went, "Oh, that's what he said to Robert." What did you do?
That's amazing.
Yeah, so this is the one where he busts Randy Orton open with his elbow, and it looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I actually found it quite uncomfortable to revisit, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and this sparked that backstage fight apparently with Chris Jericho.
That's right.
Apparently Jericho went up to him and said, "How dare you try to injure my pal?" And Lesnar's response was, "Give me a little kiss."
He's just the weirdest man. The weirdest man.
I know that's true. So obviously you hear these things on social media and you go, right, okay. You roll your eyes and say, yeah, Jericho and Lesnar fought backstage. But it was confirmed because there's an episode of Talk is Jericho's podcast.
That's right.
With Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who, by the way, the two best guests to have in an interview. I could listen to Sami Zayn talk all night, right? So they're on together, they're doing this interview and stuff, and they're talking about how they're in China, and Sami Zayn was doing a ping pong tournament, and Sami Zayn was being like the heel of the tournament, and he was beating everybody at ping pong, and he was being all obnoxious and laughing and loud and shouting in people's faces, just trying to get loads of heat. And apparently he got the ping pong ball and looked at it and went, "Give me a little kiss like Lesnar." So Kevin Owens is telling that story in the podcast, and that's how I knew it was true, because he told Jericho, he was like, "Oh, Sammy did that thing Lesnar said to you when you nearly fought him." So I was like, "Oh my God, that did actually happen." It's crazy.
Amazing.
Anyway, yeah, cool to see Orton and Lesnar. Around this time, Lesnar was doing a UFC show. I think he did UFC 2000 or 200.
200, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember after the press conference, they asked him what his future is with MMA, and the first thing he said, he went, "Well, I know I'm doing SummerSlam with Randy Orton," and I thought that was cool that he mentioned it at UFC, that he knew that he was bringing up SummerSlam. So I like Lesnar, man. He's a good guy. SummerSlam 30, the 30th SummerSlam, August 20th, good day, 2017. Main event is Lesnar versus Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman versus Samoa Joe in a mental fatal four-way, but nothing really to note.
Nothing really to know, but it's one of those matches that I was really psyched for the build-up for it, because at this point, I don't think Strowman was still really on a hot streak, and I don't think he's ever got back to that level of overness. It's hard to gauge how over he is now as champion because he's not in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
or like a legit crowd. But I just remember when the only thing I like about this match is that when they get to the moment where Lesnar and Strowman get a confrontation, that felt so important, like such a big deal, because they
Yeah.
had not clashed at that point. And it would be later on that year that they finally would clash in what was actually a disappointing match. But the point is
Yeah.
like that, they seem to be so behind building Strowman slowly at this point. So to have that little tease between the two, that's the only thing that I really take away that I enjoyed about that match. But you're right, there's not much to note.
Also, the title match in the show was Jinder Mahal versus Shinsuke Nakamura. What?
I know.
Um, Next year, SummerSlam 2018 and 19 really are two sort of Lesnar versus Reigns and Rollins matches that are really good, I think. I
Yeah.
think this is a lot of fun. Nothing will beat this WrestleMania 31 match, but the kind of threat of Strowman nearly cashing in Money in the Bank, and it's like only like 10 minutes. It's like a kind of segment more than a wrestling match.
That's what you
But I think
want
it's
from
really
Lesnar and
good.
Reigns. That's what
Yeah.
you want. Like, I would say it's the second best match they ever had together.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's just nothing too special, but nothing bad or anything. Just a lot of fun. It's a good SummerSlam too. But this is when SummerSlam turned into 4 hours long, and it's like, oh my god. And then the most recent SummerSlam up until recording date, SummerSlam 2019 at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Canada. Great crowd, by the way. Seth Rollins defeated Brock Lesnar. And in my head, I had it as a kind of squash thing where, the fans were kind of trying to turn on Rollins and Rollins just beats him. But they actually have a really good match. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it. I watched this obviously this week and just like, this is really good. Like Lesnar's selling for him and it goes on. Like there's like holds and,
Mm.
spots outside and stuff. And
Yeah.
Lesnar picks up Rollins by like his bandages round his waist and
Oh.
like swings him round like a helicopter. It's mental.
I don't think that Rollins and Lesnar ever had a bad match. Like their battleground match in 15 was
Oh,
great.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I loved the opener at WrestleMania. Like for as an opener, I thought it was great fun. And then you get to
Yep.
this, and it's very different from the WrestleMania opener, but it still works great. And I think I've been on a rant before about I hate how people seem to decide when it's cool to like Seth Rollins,
Yeah.
but he was still really popular at this point. This was just before fans started to turn on him, and fans wanted to see him beat Lesnar. And I remember really enjoying this one. I watched it the day after because by 2019 I am too old and too adult to stay up late and watch pay-per-view unless it's like I can watch like the summer ones, like the early summer ones, but by SummerSlam I'm
Yeah.
usually back at school, so I can't stay up late and watch it. But yeah, I love it, and like that's like the lasting memory of SummerSlam now is this show and this match, and it's just funny to think that now we know what time of recording that SummerSlam's probably going to be at the Amway Center in Orlando. Won't necessarily be in front of paying fans, but might be in front of more people. And it's just intriguing to think about where SummerSlam's going to go this year because this pod drops the day off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, listener, you will know more than us right now.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts on this 2019 match?
Nothing really on the match. I just think in terms of if they're doing the sort of virtual crowd thing they're going to do for SummerSlam this year. Like, are people just going to take the piss or what? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a soft spot for the Amway Center because when I went to Florida in 2018, we drove past it when we were going to our villa at the airport, and I was like, "That's where they do Raw." This has been a lot of fun looking back at all these SummerSlams.
It has.
And I looked online, and someone posted like, "Who is Mr. SummerSlam?" And for some reason, I immediately thought of Randy Orton. Don't know why.
Right.
And the WWE Network said it was Bret Hart. These past few years, it's absolutely Brock Lesnar. How many main events has he been in? How many good moments has he had?
I suppose
how
it
many
has to
good
be, doesn't
matches
it?
has he had?
Yeah.
It's so from 2012 onwards, he's in every main event or every main match. And then, of course, the one at 2002 with The Rock. I think it's definitely Lesnar, Mr. SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Could you quickly, off the top of your head, give me a top 5 SummerSlam main events and a top 5 SummerSlam pay-per-views?
I can definitely give you the main events. Let's think. So, I think my favorite SummerSlam main event that we watched.
It's hard, isn't it? It's so hard.
It is hard, but I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's Hogan and Michaels.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
nice.
honestly, it is. I'm gonna have to chuck in. I don't know what order this is really going in, but you're asking me for 5 favorites. Hogan and Michaels has definitely got to be in there now. I'll put Lesnar and Taker in there as well. I will put in, you know what? Screw it. Yeah, I'm putting in the Nexus match, and I've got 2 more spots, and I'm probably going to give those to Lesnar and The Rock, and lastly, Lesnar and Booker T. And I realize I'm omitting. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Lesnar, Brock and Booker T. I am, and I realize I'm omitting another one that I loved, which was Brett and Davey Boy Smith. But those are the 5 that I picked are all within my kind of lifetime of wrestling fandom. So what about you?
This is hard. What about you? I'm looking through my notes, and I don't know if I'm going to get 5 here, but I'm going to do it chronologically. So random 5, not a top 5. I'd go Stone Cold versus Taker from '98.
Oh God, of course.
Lesnar versus Rock. Hogan Michaels. Punk Cena. And Punk and Hardy TLC match.
Do you know what? Scrap mine. I'm going to take yours. Scrap mine.
And honorable mention to Taker and Edge in the Hell in a Cell. But yeah, it's hard, man, looking at that.
Can I also just chuck in a normal mention, not for a main event, but one of my favorites, and I'm actually now doubting myself. I think this is a SummerSlam match, but one of my favorite SummerSlam matches that isn't a main event, which I just loved, Goldberg versus Dolph Ziggler.
Oh my God, how good was that? Random, wasn't it?
So fun. That's
so good.
That's like the kind of no better opponent for Goldberg. Like for Goldberg, you want somebody who can just flail around, I mean, and that's it. That was, and the way that they did the whole kind of, he kept coming back after the match. I just loved that. That was the highlight of that pay-per-view for me.
It's good, yeah, really good one. That's what you need for Goldberg, isn't it? Like that sort of thing with Ziggler, even the WrestleMania match at 33 with Lesnar. That's what you need,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, this has been good. This was your idea, so thank you so much for this.
Yeah, my apologies, everyone.
I totally recommend we maybe do this for either Survivor Series or WrestleMania or something like that again.
Yeah. Let's say WrestleMania. We need a break from doing this.
Let's do WrestleMania because then we can do 36 matches. Right. Thanks for listening, everybody. I know it's been a marathon, but we really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun getting the SummerSlam watch along going.
My pleasure.
It really sort of reminds me of summer, that kind of warm weather watching wrestling sort of thing. So thanks so much for joining us with us.
Here, talking about summer, I'm standing here in shorts and t-shirts, so this has been great.
Yeah, me too. I've got my shorts on and my t-shirt on. Well, you can get us on social media, everybody. Twitter is @WrestleConnect1, Instagram is @WrestleConnection, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube just by searching the Wrestling Connection podcast for exclusive videos, pay-per-view reviews, exclusive excerpts from the episodes, and all sorts of others on the YouTube channel. So thanks so much. Please tell a friend, review us, subscribe to us, follow us, whatever you can do to help support the Wrestling Connection. And until next time, my friend Glenn, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy SummerSlam if you're watching tonight. If you've already watched it, we hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, folks, see you all then. Goodbye for now. And it's summertime, ladies and gents.
I know your every move. I've heard your every word. I know you well. And I've got nothing left to prove. Your threats I find absurd. I am your hell. Every time you think that I'm done, I'll come back stronger. Every time you think that you've got me, you, and I will put you in the ground. I will fight till there's nothing left, till my legs are gone. You won't forget me, 'cause I will fight till my final breath. Just to see you fall, I'll make you fear me. Every time you think I'm done, I'll come back stronger. And every time you think that you've got me, I will fight you. And I will smash you in the ground. I will fight till there's nothing left, till my legs are gone. You won't forget me.